Welcome to the Killer Innovation Show, the longest continuously produced podcast in history. Each week, Phil McKinney brings you the insights and strategies to amplify your creativity and innovation skills. Here's your host, Phil McKinney.
Welcome to another episode of Killer Innovations. In today's world, where technology is at the forefront of change, balancing innovation and security in open source software cannot be overstated. We have an exceptional guest with us today, Rob Wilmoth from Red Hat, who joined me in the mobile studio at the recent 2023 SCT Expo. During the interview, we delved into Red Hat's 30-year history in the enterprise technology landscape. Through their dedication to hardening, securing, and providing supportability for open source technology, Red Hat has played a pivotal role for businesses around the globe and has made significant contributions to the open source ecosystem. In our conversation, we delve into the nuances of software customization, collaboration, and scalability for enterprise software users. With Rob's expertise, we draw parallels between software development's meticulous nature and motorsport's adrenaline-pumping world. Uncover how Red Hat's unique approach to flexibility and responsiveness has solidified its reputation as a respected partner. Furthermore, we'll discuss Red Hat's culture of innovation, which looks 18 to 24 months ahead to align technology with people's needs, maintaining a balance between innovative thought and practical application. We'll also touch on the critical aspect of security in open source software and how Red Hat leverages its community of contributions and multiple reviewers to swiftly tackle security threats such as unintentional errors and zero-day vulnerabilities. So, join us as we break down the complexities of open source software development, security vulnerabilities, and technical debt challenges. We'll also explore possible solutions for the standardization efforts and how APIs may bridge the gaps between vendors. This conversation is packed with insight, and we're thrilled to have you with us. But before we dive in, follow, like, and share us on your favorite social media platforms. This is a great way to help us reach more people and spread the word of our podcast. If you're not receiving our free weekly newsletter, visit philmckinney.com and click membership to sign up. Now, let's delve in to this week's episode. So Rob, here we are at SCT Tech Expo. How's the show going for you?
It's awesome. It's great to bring together so many folks from different walks of life, but still the same industry. They're all trying to achieve some of the same technological goals. We've seen, for Red Hat, we've seen our ecosystem partners, both those that we currently work with and those that we wish to work with. We've also seen and had a lot of customer meetings for us, which has been just a phenomenal opportunity to, candidly get everybody together and not have to take 12 trips to see the same people.
That's always the benefit of the trade shows. There's still a lot of trade shows that are trying to do the hybrid piece. And we do hybrid. For this show, you can do it hybrid, but there's nothing like being able to see face-to-face and do the interactions. And it's not just about having a meeting and pitching your stuff, but it's about building those relationships. And I know, for instance, in the case, you're pretty involved with our work at Cable Labs with Mark Bridges and the team there. So, of having that face-to-face and that opportunity to kind of catch up. I think you're right. The industry, it's crazy here at this show this year.
Absolutely.
It is nuts,
yeah,
which is exciting. It's exciting for us. So talk a little bit about, Red Hat's been around for quite a while. Most people would have a perception of what Red Hat is or what Red Hat isn't. So give us a little bit of background on Red Hat, and then what are some of the assumptions people think about Red Hat that are not true?
Sure. So great questions. And, first and foremost, let's face it, Red Hat thinks of us as the Linux, or everybody thinks of Red Hat as the Linux guys.
Right.
That's first and foremost that comes to mind. Red Hat's been around for over 30 years. We IPO'd in 93.
Okay. I know I'm old, but it's really making me feel really old.
It's funny when I think of that and think of, so my tenure at the company is now almost coming up on 17 years. And it's one of those where I'm looking at it going, okay, is the company old or am I? And it's kind of a hit or miss. But we provide the underlying platforms that make enterprise technology work. We work within public cloud, private cloud. Again, the Linux component is certainly the foundation of what we do, but it's the base part of the platform that gets created initially to make up the stuff that really lets the applications do what they do best and provide business value to the end customer. We've gone through some iterations of what that looks like. Initially, it was Red Hat Enterprise Linux. Secondarily, we had a virtualization platform that was based on KVM, not keyboard, video, mouse, but actual KVM technology for virtualization. Then we also branched out into OpenStack, which we still have today, as well as middleware technologies and even AI/ML and our Kubernetes platform, OpenShift.
Yeah, I mean, when I think of Red Hat, I always think back to the early days of Red Hat because everybody was interested in Linux, but nobody in the enterprise side was willing to jump in. At that time, I was the CIO for Telligent in Washington, D.C. And we always looked at it, but man, it's the fear of support.
Yeah.
And that's where Red Hat really stepped in, was to kind of take that fear out, because you had somebody that it wasn't just a pure Wild West open source model. It was really about maintenance, distributions, somebody that's going to be on the other end of that phone when you run into a problem.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that. You asked about the things that a lot of people don't know about Red Hat, and this is actually leading straight into the answer to that question. First and foremost, everything Red Hat does is open source. Mm-hmm. As we consume upstream technology, we also innovate on it. We harden it. We provide security. We provide supportability. We provide a life cycle. We provide a roadmap. That's something that you can't get, or at least can't get easily, from an upstream community, especially ones that are not fully matured.
Right.
Within that, what we do is provide exactly the same services you just mentioned. We're the backstop, if you will. But once we do all of that, we actually take that same stuff that we've just done and we kick it back out to those upstream communities. And in fact, for our customer base, you can download the source code of everything that we do via what's referred to as a source RPM. So basically a small package that encompasses the source code of what we have. So if you want to look through it, you're welcome to. We spend a lot of time making sure that what we consume from the upstream communities is ready for enterprise consumption. Mm-hmm. And a big part of that is spending the time working with and collaborating with the communities and also with the other ecosystem vendors and partners to take that feedback and blast it back up to the communities, work within those communities. I mean, we do the exact same thing with the cable industry. We want to make sure that as the cable industry looks at things like convergence, looks at things like DOCSIS 4 or beyond, and really understands what piece parts need to be there. Okay, let's take a look at certain applications. One of the popular ones right now, Kubernetes, for containerization orchestration. Let's make sure that all of the networking pieces that need to be there for Kubernetes to support the cable industry are there. And if they're not, let's collaborate with a Cable Labs. Let's collaborate with some of our other partners. Let's collaborate with the ecosystem. Let's collaborate with our customers and make sure those exist in not only a upstream fashion, but also in a supported, scalable, manageable fashion, and furthermore supportable, making sure that there is somebody on the other end of the phone to help somebody through whatever issue may be coming up.
Yeah, so in that cases, when you talk about partnering with the cable industry or whatever, do those become islands, or are they all part of just the main, they go right into the main core of everything?
That's a great question. We strive to not have 100% customization. Now, that being said, we also engineer things to be flexible, right, so that the end customer has a level of customization for what they need their applications to do. So if you need to do performance tuning where you need a little bit of better network performance, but you can sacrifice a little bit on CPU or memory, go for it, have fun. It's almost like, I'm big into motorsports, so tuning your car or tuning up your car, if you want to go a little faster at the sacrifice of a little bit of fuel economy, not that I would ever do that, you can certainly do that, but we've got to be able to ship to the customer with a base level of configuration that we know is going to work in a performant, reliable fashion.
Right. And so in this case, you're trying to make sure that you keep the platform the same, but the knobs are all custom to where they're doing the deployments.
Absolutely. And it's funny, with Red Hat Enterprise Linux, if you are looking at it and you're like, Red Hat, you've done a great job of the kernel, you've done a great job of the security, but I want more functionality out of the graphics interfaces.
Right.
Okay, great. Go over to your favorite graphics vendor, grab their driver that may be proprietary, not open source. That's fine. Compile it and run it. The catch there is that, and it's not really even a catch, it's just you need to be aware as the end consumer that if we make upgrades or changes in the run of this, and it's not certified with us in some way, form, or fashion, you may have a little bit of work to do. And the upside is that in that specific example, most of those vendors understand that, have the documentation for it, and know what to do with it. With some of the bigger technologies that are, OpenShift or OpenStack, where there's other piece parts that make up this stack or make up the platform, being able to fully swap out, for example, the network interface. So you don't like the network interface that Red Hat shipped. Let's say you've got a partnership with Juniper and you want to use theirs instead. Great. We have a partnership. It's certified. It's going to survive upgrades. It's going to survive releases. We work with them on the life cycle. And we have other vendors that we've worked with for various other pieces of this, of the entire platform. And that the benefit is that it doesn't only apply to one part of your network.
Right.
So it's not just your internal IT data center. It's not just the base regional data center. It's something that we take a lot of pride in, that you can now extend yourself not only for your entire private cloud, but also your public cloud and also whatever you're doing at the edge.
Right. So, some people, when you hear all of that, you're thinking, okay, so Red Hat, is building deep partnerships with the verticals that it's going after. In the case
Correct.
of the area you work in, telco, cable, side of it. In Red Hat's always had a great reputation for being very responsive to the customers or industry needs, etc. But Red Hat also innovates on their own. So how does Red Hat think about doing something maybe that a customer's not asking for, but Red Hat knows needs to be done in order to get ready for something that may come in the future?
Yeah, so that's one of those interesting pieces, and obviously the topic du jour here, is how do we actually innovate but also keep track of what's coming?
Right.
So we have teams of individuals actually, myself included, that are looking 18, 24 months out, if not further. So what we're really paying attention to is how our customers, not how they're supposed to use the technology, not how the end consumer is viewing using the technology, but how it actually gets consumed. What are the pieces that make everyday life a little bit less easy? Mm-hmm. And then how can we seal that gap with technology? And the fun part is that one of the things that I enjoy doing is taking the technology and applying the people in the process to it as well. So if you think about it, technology is cool, but if it doesn't align with the people that need to either A, consume it, B, make it happen, or 3, manage it, and the processes that go around it, maybe even interfacing with other legacy pieces, then you don't have a solution that's going to move the needle for the business.
Right.
So really, from an innovation standpoint, back to the actual question, we're looking at what's going to move the needle for the business and ultimately for the end subscriber in this particular industry.
So is there a separate team that focuses on innovation, or is it just culturally just part of the organization broadly?
It's a little bit of both.
Okay.
So we do have innovation teams at Red Hat. We do have individuals that are looking at the far out.
Right.
But the flip is that we as a culture also empower our associates and our team members. If you have an idea, bring it forward.
Yeah.
If you see a community that you don't think we're paying attention to, let's go learn about it. Cable for Red Hat is, well, by cable longevity standards, is somewhat new. We've been working in this space for probably 6 or 7 years now. Dedicated. We've always done it, but just like with a complete industry focus, the way that we've built it today started about that time frame ago. And so being able to walk into some of these standards bodies, I mean, when we first started, there were members of the team that, I hate to say it, but didn't know what SCTE was. And so the rest of us who did know, who had the cable background and understood, how broadband, not only technology, but back to the people process, how the culture worked.
Right.
We had to take a step back and say, okay,
Right.
we need to understand this, and we need to be able to align ourselves with some of these organizations, because they're going to help us understand not only where the ball is going, but where the ball came from.
Right.
And so having some of those history lessons also lets us look at the trajectory to make sure that the things we're kicking out aren't so far-fetched that nobody's going to do it.
Right.
Because you can have the best idea in the world, flying cars, for example, but if nobody, I'm not getting in a flying car right now. Like, no, it's just not happening. Airplanes, sure. But I do think that from an innovation standpoint, there still has to be that degree of reality for somebody to want to make the additional investment and keep the stability, the supportability, the et cetera built into it underneath the hood.
Yeah, it's really applied innovation versus just innovation for innovation's sake.
Yeah.
Making sure that it's got a path to application versus getting so far out in the future that you're doing Buck Rogers versions of.
Well, not to say that we don't want to pay attention to that, because ultimately that will become potentially a reality, and if we don't pay attention to it, then we miss the boat.
Right, but there's also, it's always a balance, right?
Absolutely.
You're doing some percentage of your R&D is maybe in that longer range stuff,
right?
And then as you get closer, the budget, it's like the inverse pyramid. Small amount in the long range stuff, and as it gets closer, you put more money behind that activity.
Right. And one of the unique things about Red Hat is that the vast majority of our innovation is done in upstream communities.
Yeah.
So, a lot of the work that we do, of course we have certain things like embargoed code. So if a partner is releasing something brand new from a chipset standpoint and they're not ready for it to see the light of day yet, of course we're going to do that behind closed doors, because we want it supported on day one. They want it supported on day one. We can't, leak that out.
Right.
But what we do find is that the vast majority of the work that we're trying to do in upstream communities, where everybody else gets the opportunity to contribute to. And that helps make sure that there are more eyes on this than, any one company could have ever brought forward. I mean, if you take, again, Kubernetes, for example, there are hundreds of thousands of developers that are actively contributing to Kubernetes. There are certain companies, there's, several companies that are directly contributing, Google and Red Hat and others being, the tops. But, if you start looking at commit lists of who's actually committing code or contributing documentation, or not even doing the development, but understanding how somebody needs to consume this and doing, as I mentioned, documentation, things like that. There's a whole bunch of different ways that the innovation can propel these different types of applications or these different types of projects.
Yeah, and it is interesting given the community nature of it. Because one of the things that, not Red Hat, but open source in the early days always had the criticism around security.
Yeah.
Right. And we see it now on the front page of the Wall Street Journal 3 or 4 times a week where someone gets hacked or some 0-day thing pops up or whatever. So talk a little bit about on the security side. How do you deal with that when you got so many, like, what I would call hands in the pot?
So the thing to keep in mind is that the majority of the hands in the pot or the hands in the kitchen are trying to put to keep the kitchen and food analogy going, the proper spice blend. They're not trying to drop, arsenic in it or poison or anything like that. So the upside is that by and large, the challenges that we see, if something does accidentally slip through, it's not an intentional thing. The intentional things get caught real fast. But if there's an unintentional thing that gets...
Intentional from the standpoint of that...
Of malicious.
There's enough eyes reviewing it that someone's going to say, okay,
that doesn't make sense.
That does not smell right.
Yeah, and we've seen some of this where it's unintentional and it gets caught.
Yeah,
We've actually seen scenarios with upstream code where somebody accidentally tried to put their development release from their personal laptop into a commit, and it accidentally had like their local username and password in it as a hard-coded artifact. That almost certainly was not me. It also might have been me. But it was just one of those things where it was like 2 a.m. I got to get this done. Click, oh man, what have I done? And then I got to back it out and redo it, and change a bunch of passwords. But what we have seen is that the more eyes that you have on something, especially if they are operating for the right reasons, the faster you can catch those things. And even if it's something that crops up later down the line, I mean, if we think of, some of the major zero-day vulnerabilities that we've had in recent history, it wasn't something that anybody planned. It was stuff that the communities themselves actually ended up saving the day on to be as quick as possible to respond to these. And Red Hat specifically takes a little bit of a unique approach. When we find a vulnerability or a vulnerability is made public, sometimes just by the nature of the way that code is developed in an upstream open source manner, sometimes we find that it doesn't even apply. Or because of the way that the community that we work with has implemented it, that we are pulling the code from and innovating on it, it doesn't even actually apply to us. So we can very simply send back to the government agencies that track this. We can just say, it doesn't apply, here's the reason why. Mm-hmm. In cases where we find it a situation where we need to be able to respond exceptionally quickly, we need to get code to our customers, we know we can fix it, we'll issue what's called a hotfix. And that's something that, in the background, we're checking with those communities to make sure we're in line with what they're going to do about it, because we don't want to leave somebody on a fork or a different version than what the community is, and now the manageability and trying to get everybody back on the same software stream gets chaotic. So being able to take that security vulnerability or bug fix or any type of enhancement that needs to be made and make sure it's in line, but we can still respond quickly, something that's absolutely paramount for every industry.
Right. So a lot of people in the software world all have reporting and bounty programs. Does Red Hat have something like that for the...
So we don't necessarily have a bounty program. We do have a lot of reporting that comes in. We have reporting that goes back out. We follow very closely with what the security organizations and what other operating systems end up doing. We actually have some examples where there have been public cloud providers that have released their own variants of operating systems that have ended up with vulnerabilities, and they've actually ended up being able to use our code, the way that we upstream something, to fix what they have done. And we love seeing that because we want to be a good community steward at all times. We think that's just the best way to run our business.
When you think about open source and the work at Red Hat, you're mentioning community.
Yep.
You guys are what I would call is collaboration at hyperscale. When you think about the number of people, how big, when you say community, everybody that's contributing, reviewing, check-in, how big is that for Red Hat?
I honestly don't know the number. I know that we have thousands of people who are engineers on the payroll. I know that, being now a part of IBM gives us access to even more engineers. And it's actually interesting. IBM actually holds more open source licenses than we do. So which is awesome. And we continue helping each other with a lot of these types of projects. Now, the other upside is that IBM lets Red Hat operate completely autonomous.
Right.
So we're still, I'm a nearly 17-year veteran, and this is still Red Hat. Much bigger Red Hat when we first started, I think, or when I first started, it was sub 1,000.
Yeah.
And now it's a lot. But as far as being able to keep track of these things, being able to work within these communities, being able to make sure that we are paying attention to how the communities evolve. We actually have Red Hat associates that are working in communities that are not part of our productized offerings yet,
so you're seeding the work.
Absolutely,
and before they realize that there's going to be a broader engagement.
Well, and candidly, there may never be. So what we want to see...
So why would you do it then?
Exactly. This is part of innovation. Let's face it.
Right.
When you innovate, when you do this process, when you do these think tank exercises, sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it doesn't fit.
Couldn't have said it better. That's exactly... A lot of people have a hard time. A lot of leaders have a hard time accepting that because they want to see, I gave $1,000 to this project team. Where's my return? In some cases, you're not going to get a return.
Yeah,
there's not going to be anything there.
And so the entire goal is to pay very close attention to understanding where these types of innovation opportunities are. Look at the investments that others are making. Look at the investments we can make ourselves, and then continue validating that I'm going to say it this way, and then I'm going to clarify a little bit. But we want to see the way that the community that we've invested in is maturing.
Right.
And when I say maturing, I don't mean, immature, we need an adult in the room. But what we want to see is how aspects of it are being carried forward. We want to see how it's going to be leveraged. We want to see if there is a degree of consistency within the code base and within the people who are actively working in it. Does that make sense?
Exactly.
Okay,
exactly.
Perfect.
And this gets a little bit extending the community conversation. For instance, you see, like when we put out a job opening, right? We get people who submit, and one of the statistics they quote in their resume is their involvement in open source communities, and how active are they, and how much code they've contributed, those types of things. Some companies are like, "Woo, that's great, bring them on." Some companies are like, no, So, what's your thoughts on that? Because a lot of companies would say, "Hold it, I'm paying you to be a software engineer for me, which means everything you write is mine. Don't be giving it away." Versus being a good citizen in the community.
So that's an interesting one, and it really depends on the company and the organization.
Yeah, exactly.
I would say that especially job candidates, keeping in mind that the interview process is as much an interview for them as it is for the company that's interviewing them. A lot of people forget that, and I do interview for our hires somewhat frequently. So making sure that they don't have questions. But back to the question at hand. I think understanding a company's open source policy and understanding how they want to interact with open source communities and upstream communities. And we see a couple of different types. We see some that simply want to consume open source. They don't necessarily have a desire to contribute back. However, I would say that if you are going to consume and do any level of innovation on that code, if you don't contribute back and make sure that you stay in line with that community, you run the risk of inheriting technical debt. And what I mean by technical debt is the ability to make a change that is now your responsibility to keep track of while the rest of the community moves forward. So it's one of those, and there's a dollar you can put on that. Sometimes, yeah, it's debt, so there's dollar. So think of it this way. Let's say you are running the Red Hat Enterprise Linux operating system, and you're like, you know what? I need to add this particular driver to it, and it's going to require me to recompile the entire kernel. You're not just going to be able to insert a module. You're going to have to recode the entire thing. Awesome. How much is it going to cost you when Red Hat releases a new kernel to recompile it again?
But that's the proverbial problem we've had in software since software was invented, right? It's
absolutely
it's maintaining your support over the version releases for the base code.
Exactly. And so without doing actions that create that fork or that technical debt, we take care of that for you. And so a lot of the and a lot of other distributions, it's not just Red Hat,
right,
but a lot of other distributions of Linux and distributions of the platforms help take care of that. I mean, that's one of the big value adds.
Ghost being the other ones that are out there. They're trying to
absolutely
insulate themes from the base code piece.
Absolutely. So with that technical debt, what we have found is that if you do too much hyper customization to take you away from either a base platform such as a Red Hat or even a base community that's upstream for certain packages, now you have to calculate the number of hours it's going to take one of your FTEs to bring it back to handle that lifecycle release. Otherwise, you've now ended up somewhere that you may not have, number one, ever expected to be, but number two, every time it happens and every time there's an iteration in that code, you accidentally move a little further away.
Right.
And we have seen customers in the in both cable as well as traditional fixed wireless that have gotten into some pretty interesting situations because of that, because they're like, ooh, we want this. You can't have that anymore because you're too far off the mainstream of what we do.
Yeah, I mean, keeping the update cycles going can be... That's the challenge. It's every CIO's nightmare.
Exactly.
Right?
So we try to,
and at some point you end maintenance on those older versions.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So then you're totally isolated at that point.
Well, and unfortunately, for better or for worse, let's face it, the cable industry is no stranger to having old versions of old things.
Yeah, we could that would be a whole nother show.
Old versions of old things with Rob and Phil. But no, I think that it's really interesting watching the industry try to determine which pieces they can move very, very quickly with versus the pieces that need to stick around and they need to have a longer term maintenance cycle with.
Well, or replace, right?
Right, exactly.
There's a big effort to chop and move, particularly with converged services and all the things that are coming. Hey, Rob, as we wrap up on the show today, I always like to end on a question that one gets you to think a little bit, because it's not a question you're expecting, but also to inform the audience about things that are out there that they should take a look at. What is it that you're curious about now? Could be anything. And why are you curious about it?
That's an interesting question, and you're right, I was not expecting it. Good job. So, I think what I'm curious about right now, and I've been curious about it for a little while, is how we apply standards to technology, and specifically standards to software, in such a way that it doesn't end up being everybody has their own standard. And I think that we run... The reason I'm curious about this is because so many industries, not just cable, have found their way out of a siloed, unstandardized, but vertically integrated approach with their vendors. And now that everything's moving back to software defined, it gives the opportunity for those types of situations to rear their ugly heads again.
Yeah.
And I don't think that it's a situation where we need to, run around with our hair on fire and say we need more standards. I don't think adding standards is the right answer. And specifically in the cable industry, the talk that I was part of this morning, Steve Williams was talking about the cable industry and standards as a whole. Just let's avoid more if we can. But I do still think that there's a couple of projects out there, Kamara being one of them, where we're looking at APIs to bridge some of those gaps And I know that the team at Cable Labs is working very heavily with that,
right.
And leveraging, some Red Hat resources actually to help. But I think that, the thing I'm curious about is how are we going to come out to the other side of this, especially when everybody's focused on convergence right now, and make sure that we have this interoperability where we can truly disaggregate and decentralize the base cable network the right way. And, let's face it, we could take the entire CMTS, we can take the entire DOCSIS platform and break it down into its piece parts, but that's probably not the right answer.
Nah.
The right answer is somewhere between having everything fully centralized and bolted together and completely broken out. And I don't know that we have the right answer. And I do think that having APIs that bridge different pieces or different vendors or different, homegrown solutions together is what's going to get us there. We just have to be real careful not to accidentally shoot ourselves in the foot.
Yeah, you bring up an interesting point about your curiosity on how do we need to think differently about standards rather than turning them into handcuffs and siloed. How do you really bring them across? Rob, I really want to thank you for taking the time joining me here on the bus.
This was wonderful.
Here at the show, and have a great rest of the show. I want to express my deepest gratitude to you, our dedicated listener, for joining us today. I hope that the conversation with Rob from Red Hat has provided you with valuable insights into the world of open source software. Indeed, it's your passion for knowledge and innovation that drives us to bring you meaningful conversations and content each and every week. Your engagement is vital to us. Without you, our mission to foster a richer, more informed community of innovators would be impossible. In light of this, I would be deeply appreciative if you could share the word about the podcast. If you found today's discussion enlightening, don't hesitate to recommend Killer Innovations to your friends, colleagues, and anyone you think might enjoy or benefit from our content. Remember, a single share can go a long way in supporting our mission and broadening our community. I encourage you to connect on your preferred social media platforms. Whether it's Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, or Instagram, I am there. By following me and engaging with my posts, you'll help increase the show's visibility in the digital space, enabling us to reach more tech enthusiasts, more innovators like you. Additionally, your feedback is crucial for our growth and improvement. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions for future episodes, please contact me. You can reach me at phil@killerinnovations.com. I value your input and I strive to make each episode better than the last. And lastly, if you're not already receiving our free weekly newsletter, head on over to philmckinney.com, click on membership to sign up. It's a fantastic way to stay updated with our latest episodes and valuable content. And once again, thank you for your time. Your support is the driving force behind Killer Innovations, and I couldn't do it without you. I look forward to welcoming you back in the next episode as we continue our journey through the fascinating world of innovation. Stay curious, keep innovating, and see you next time. Bye-bye.
Podcasting nonstop since 2005, this has been the Killer Innovation Show on the Innovators Network.